second. Okay, so this is the finale, basically, of our Tour de Tanya. This is class 10. We've been through the entire book now, and we're going to try and do a sikum, a summary of all 53 chapters in under an hour. And just to give you some kind of idea about this book is, I worked it out last night from all the shiurim that I've given in this. The average shiur that I give to get through the whole book takes about 120 hours. So we're going to try and do it in 120th of the time. So we'll leave out a few bits, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, I wanted to just say,
we get a coffee break?
No.
Okay.
And this, I never mentioned this, but I made this class as a Ilu Nishmas, as a, how'd you say that, as a merit for the neshamas of my father's parents, who's with us, Yehuda ben Yitzchak and Esther ben Fivish, who are looking down on us. This should be good for them. Okay, so before we begin, there's one that we need to define two words immediately, which is toiv and ra, which gets translated generally as good and evil. But we translate them in Tanya. Toiv we translate as selfless, and ra we translate as selfish. The concept of having a sense of self, the more we have a sense of self, the more selfhood we experience, that could be called evil, even though we wouldn't use that word. It doesn't mean demonic, kind of malevolent evil. We just mean self-consciousness. That's what we call evil in this book, or ra. And toiv means selfless, means transparency and selfless, the feeling of unity with everything else. Shalom Gabriel. The book is based on a verse in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, that says, Ki karov elecha davar ma'od, v'ficha v'levavecha la'asoisoi. That this thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do. And I think it's only been after having spent a couple of thousand hours learning this book that I finally kind of understand the connection of this verse. This is very close to you. That's from Moshe? No way. Wow. That this thing is very close to you. And the word ma'od in Sefer Tanya is a very, very holy word that I don't think we're going to talk about. But anyway, the pasuk is, the book is based on the assumption, or to make something standard before we start, not prerequisite, the supposition, is that right? The supposition that this thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do. What the Rebbe is basically requesting from us is behavioral perfection. He explains that we are capable of, even if we're not perfect internally, every Jew, and really every human, but we're just talking about Jews right now, every Jew is capable of behavioral perfection. Okay, so the Sefer basically splits cleanly into two parts. We have chapter 1 to 25, and then chapter 26 to 53. Chapter 1 to 26, to 25, so you could really call like the outline. The Rebbe explains all the ingredients, all the players, all the parts, how it fits together, and what we're here to do. From 26 to 53, he goes into, like, I summarized it as advice, application, and enrichment. So really, from chapters 1 to 25, you can understand what it means to be Jewish. From 26 to 53, there's a lot more cool stuff to find out, but we know what to do up until chapter 25. Okay, so it starts like this. We're already 7 minutes behind schedule, but we'll catch up with Zot Hashem. The foundation of the entire Tanya is based on the premise that a Jew has two souls. Okay, a soul is considered really a soul is something that knows and feels and behaves. Really, you could even say more. It wants and it knows and it feels and it behaves. It is a entire being, a personality. And the Jew is in possession of two of them. So what's the Jew? Well, that's a good question. The Jew is really the human is the space in which those two beings coexist. The part that makes us Jewish is the second soul that is called the godly soul, that sometimes in like secular parlance we call the neshama. Okay, but the Jew, to say the Jew is a neshama is not really correct. The Jew is the being that is trying to choose his neshama. So we are the space that houses the natural soul and the godly soul. Now, the natural soul is a created being. That's structure, we'll talk about in a minute, but the structure of it is one of independence, meaning that each of its 10 parts work independently of each other, and that is typical of a created being. A created being has an ego. So 1 second. So a created being having an ego feels a sense of separation from everything else. And the reason why that is because the very structure of that human mortal soul is based on separation, fragmentation, dislocation, however you want to describe it. Okay. Not the case for the godly soul. In the godly soul, the structure, again, that we'll explain in a moment, as well, Hashem, is interdependent and unified. So these are two very important definitions of what we have: mundane and holy. Okay, mundane, as we said before, good means selfless and evil means self-full. But we could also say that good means interdependent and unified, and Ra, evil or mundane, would mean fragmented and independent. Okay, so the very structure of the human soul is fragmented, and the very structure of the godly soul is interdependent and unified. And that gives rise to the two opposite outlooks in the world. The natural soul sees the world as a place of fragmentation and is threatened constantly by everything that's going on. It sees things as either a way to help it or a way to hinder it or irrelevant to it. Whereas the godly soul's outlook is one of complete his colorless. How is it his colorless?
Encompassing.
Complete completion and I can't think of a better word.
What's the word again?
Inclusive.
Inclusive. Thank you. Inclusive. Yeah, I have someone sitting with me helping me out. Yeah, a very inclusive outlook on life. The human soul, because it's so aware of its mortality and that it will not be at some point, is driven exclusively by this will to live. We could go deeper and explain what that means, but that's enough for us right now. Everything that you do on a human level is really to further your existence and to solidify your existence and to eradicate anything that poses a threat to your existence. The godly soul, on the other hand, death is irrelevant to it because it's godly and eternal and is completely unfazed, and it's just not relevant to it, the concept of death. So it has no fear of death and is driven by a desire to serve its creator, and that's it. So that's the dichotomy going on in the Jew. The mechanics of the soul, basically, to say it very, very quickly, is the soul is made of, the soul, so to speak, has a head and a body. Okay, obviously it's not physical. The head is composed of 3 parts, Chochmah, Bina, and Das, and the body, we'll just say for ease, is composed of 2 parts, which is, or one part which is emotions, but would be love and fear, or love and hate, or love and awe, whatever word you want to put into it. The way the mind works, on the most simple level is Chokhmah is the flash of inspiration, the entire idea in germ form. Bina is taking that kind of spiritual energy, like that seed, and giving it length and depth and breadth, thinking through the idea and extrapolation. And Das would be the integration of the idea, where a person, so to speak, sits on the idea for enough time where he begins to identify with the idea and take it personally. Once we take something personally, now that gives birth to emotions, because the two primary emotions, let's just say love and fear, are a movement towards, that's love, and a repulsion away, that's fear. So basically, love and fear is just the idea of moving towards something or moving away from something. That's the most simple understanding of love. Once you have identified with a concept or with some kind of idea, that will give birth to emotions, because before I feel it identified and connected to the idea is largely irrelevant to me. Now, when we have identified with an idea and we are now taking it personally and we now have emotions towards their idea, emotions flow downwards. Emotions desire to be expressed through behavior. There's three kinds of behavior: thought, speech, and action. Believe it or not, thought is considered a behavior. You are in control of what you think about. You're not in control of what spits up into your mind, but you are in control of what you entertain. That's the point of thought. So thought is an activity, speech is an activity, and action is an activity. As such, these are the expression of the love and the fear of the soul. So when you love something, or when you fear something, or hate it, or in awe of it, whatever it is, how do you say it? It it animates behavior. And that's why behavior is called clothing. According to Kabbalah and Hasidus, behavior is called clothing. Thought, speech, and action is called clothing. Why? There's many amazing reasons, but just for one of them is that you express yourself through what you wear. You will know that a king is a king by one way, is what he's wearing. And you know that a beach bum is a beach bum because of what he's wearing, okay? And how he has his hair, maybe, and the tattoos as well. But anyway, but well, that's amazing, isn't it? Tattoos. Sorry. So emotions express themselves through behavior, thought, speech, and action. And that gives us a little entrance into what mitzvahs are. Okay, mitzvahs are actions, and mitzvahs are ways that we express our love and our fear for Hashem. Our fear for Hashem is expressed by not doing the negative mitzvahs, and our love for Hashem is expressed by doing the positive mitzvahs. Without the mitzvahs, we would not have any way of expressing our emotions towards God. The mitzvahs are vessels, so to speak. The action of the mitzvahs are vessels that allow us to express our godly emotions. Imagine being married to somebody who doesn't need anything, who has no needs whatsoever. It would be incredibly frustrating, where you have a tremendous love for someone and there's nothing you can do for them. So that's what the mitzvahs are. The mitzvahs allow us an opportunity to actually do something for Hashem. So our love and fear of the godly soul becomes enclosed in mitzvahs. Now, learning Torah is something different. You know the old adage, you are what you eat? So you could really modify that to say your body is what you eat. You know what you are? You are what you learn. That's what you are. So when you learn Torah, it's food, so to speak, for the soul. and you ingest it, just like when you understand something, your mind surrounds it. It's called grasping an idea, meaning you surround the idea. That means the idea becomes internal to you, and as such, the idea, or what you've learned, the concept, becomes, so to speak, of you. Just for example, the concept of 2 times 2 equals 4. You don't need to think about that, but you know that your life, you run your life according to, there's a lot of things that you run your life to, but one of the things that you run your life to, one of the concepts that is in your life always, is the concept of 2 times 2 equals 4. That has become part of you, and that's what Torah is. When we learn Torah, which is the will and the wisdom of the Creator, we actually, so to speak, it's like, in a sense, eating and we bring into ourselves the Creator, and we become one with the Creator. The Creator becomes one with us. We become godly. That's how we become godly, is by learning Torah. Okay, we mentioned the concept of klipas noige and gimel klipas tameus. When we spoke about good, we said good is selfless, which could also be described as transparent, like glass. That would also be called holy, kadosh. Evil, then, would be the opposite of that. It would be the concept of opacity, where there's a concept of self, meaning that the light isn't able to pass through. But there's 2 basic levels to this kind of concealment, this husk, this shell. One would be called opaque. That would be the lowest level, where no light can shine through whatsoever. That's utter concealment. And then another level would be called translucent, which is considered, like milky glass, where like frosted glass, where light does pass through, but is impeded. That would be, there's a sense of self, but not an ultimate sense of self. So the things in this world that are connected or derive their life force, their godly life force, through way of what's called the klipas noiga, the intermediary shell, that makes up the world of the permissible, that makes up the world of kosher food, kosher relationships, etc., that aren't a mitzvah, but are available to be taken by the Jew and elevated in his divine service. Whereas the things that are that are opaque, which means they are completely covered over, they make up the world of the permissible. That would be treif food, that would be treif relationships, etc. Things that the Jew has to avoid. Okay, we can raise up the things that we need to avoid in a few ways. Would be avoiding it completely. Would be in a case of where we would die if we didn't partake in some kind of food, or what else? Or by a non-Jew having eaten the sandwich and helping us in some way with that energy, and with us dedicated to serving the Creator, that would also that would also help rise up this lowest level. Okay, the Rebbe introduced in chapter 9, we've just been through 8 chapters now. Chapter 9, the Rebbe explains how this dichotomy takes place inside the Jew between the human soul and the godly soul. The fight of the Jew is it's not between human and animal. The fight of the Jew is between human and godly, unless he has taken on what's called a tevasheni, a second nature, where it could be that he would now be fighting to just be human, but a factory installed Jew who hasn't been polluted in any way, with the factory installed settings, his struggle is between human and godly, not between animal and human. And the Rebbe explains that this is comparable to what's called 2 kings warring over a small city. What's the small city? The small city is the body, okay? And the two kings, the godly soul and the animal soul, are both struggling for control over the body. It's like driving a car and you've got two people kind of like jostling with each other for the steering wheel. There's no what's the word? There's no compromise in this battle. Either the godly soul is in control of the body, which means it's him thinking, it's him speaking, and it's him doing. Should we say it's her thinking, her speaking, or her doing? Or the animal soul takes control of the body, and then it would be him thinking, him speaking, and him doing. And that's the struggle of the Jew. The struggle of the regular Jew is, how do you think, speak, and act? Not how do you feel. How you feel is in the domain of the tzaddik. This is chapter 10. The tzaddik is described as a being who his internal world is completely aligned with God. There is no struggle anymore. There's no dichotomy of human and godly. There's just the godly. Okay, he is called the tzaddik, and there's no struggle there. So obviously, if his inner world is completely aligned and what's the word? If his inner world is harmonious in that there's there's no struggle. His emotions are completely for God. Then obviously his behavior is going to be perfect. Then there's the Russia, okay? The Russia we call the sinner or the evil one, whatever. Those are very bad translations. The definition of a Russia is basically someone who, in the best case scenario, every now and again could be very infrequently, and also with transgressions that are very minor, every now and again will commit a sin, an avera. Okay, but every now and again, it's not talking about like demonic, malevolent kind of, kind of evil. It's just talking about somebody who doesn't have absolute behavioral control. His inner world is in conflict. He has selfish tendencies and he has selfless tendencies. And his outer world, his garments, his behavior, thought, speech, and action is also not perfect, meaning that every now and again, in the best case scenario, he will do, say, or think something selfish. And in the very worst case scenario, he could be doing, thinking, saying, and thinking selfish things basically all the time, but will have thoughts of regret. And then comes the star of the show, is the Beinoini. This is who the book is written for. In fact, this book is also called Sefer HaBeinoini, meaning the middle guy, the intermediate guy. This is who we're striving to be. This is the guy who experiences an inner conflict. He has both selfless and selfish impulses, but he acts perfectly. His thought, speech, and action is always selfless. It's always outward towards Hashem. It is always involved in Torah and mitzvahs and has no connection whatsoever to averas and to sins. And this is predicated on the foundation of the entire book. This is, in my opinion, is the foundation of the entire book. 4 words. Moyach sholet al halev. The mind, the brain, is sholet.
Rules, governs.
Thank you. The mind rules over the heart. Now, what does that mean? And I think everyone will agree with this. I think it's self-evident. A person struggling to not smoke cigarettes. Yeah, I've been involved in this. And I know how difficult it is to quit smoking, yeah? So the guy hasn't smoked for, say, a month, and, he's been clean for a month, and now he's had he had a row with his wife, and he lost some business, and he's in a really bad way, and he's going for the packet, and he doesn't want to smoke the cigarette, and he knows that if he smokes the cigarette, he's going to fall back into the whole thing, but he's like, I'm going out my head. And he's about to light this. In fact, his friend's sitting there next to him, saying, Shmuel, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And he's like, and he's got the lighter, and someone pops out from behind the bush and says, Diamond, if you don't smoke that cigarette, I'll give you $3,000. The lighter goes away, the cigarette goes onto the floor. Thank you very much. And I have behavioral control. What happened? Everyone knows that the mind rules over the heart. The problem is that when the mind doesn't have enough ammunition and the heart is screaming so loud, then the mind doesn't rule over the heart. But really, always the mind is in control of the heart. So if you have the right information, if you're armed with the right information, for example, another thing would be if a doctor popped out from behind the bush and said to me, Shmuel, we just got your tests back, and if you smoke one more cigarette, it's basically 99% that you're going to die. Again, you'll see the cigarette fall on the floor. That's what this is, the concept that the Tanya is totally predicated on, is that your mind rules over your heart. And to know that is just, I mean, it's just the most liberating, fantastic thought you can ever have. Unless you're actually ill, and there could be, you know, people are ill, but we can assume that we're not ill, that unless you're actually mentally damaged, your mind rules over your heart. And that's basically what the Rebbe says. And he explains that through that, you're going to have the ability to behave correctly. But then he goes on and he also says, there's another concept of the mind ruling over the heart. Number one, the mind rules over the heart means that you always have behavioral control, number one. Number two is you can choose to think about what you want to think about. And what you think about will actually influence your emotions. So the more I think about, you know, Donald Trump's, I don't know what he really did wrong, but let's just say the more I think about his, what's it called, not his impeachment, like how he riled up all the murderers and stuff, and, you know, whatever they did. And the more I think about that, the more incensed I become about it, and the more emotions I will have towards my hatred towards him will build. Let's just say I just keep watching CNN. Yeah, my hatred to Trump will build and build. Yeah, but what about if I don't watch CNN and I just start, you know, watching the Discovery Channel, not like lions killing stuff, but just looking how beautiful the world is and being really thinking about how beautiful the world is, then I might actually inspire some noble, healthy emotions in myself. That's another concept of Moich Sholet Alalev, that the mind rules over the heart, meaning we are in control of what we think about, or maybe in this generation we could say we are in control of what we click on. And what we click on is going to have a massive impact on what we feel. So if we're watching like MMA bloodbath fights and all kinds of, you know, horrible stuff on YouTube, whatever, then we are going to give birth to those kind of violent and unproductive, destructive emotions. Whereas if we're listening to inspired classes by holy people talking about selfless stuff, then it could be that our heart will be moved towards selflessness and inspired in that direction. So Moich Sholet Alalev, the mind is in control of the heart, the Rebbe explains, is basically two things. Number one, perfect behavioral control is always within reach. And number two, a long-term plan, which is really chapters 16 and 17, the long-term plan is that you are responsible for your emotions. Meaning,
But the mind needs ammunition to rule.
I don't know where that came
Something
from.
weird. There's something weird in the computer. Yeah.
That was weird. Anyway, someone's checking us. But anyway, that we are responsible for thinking, pondering, and meditating on the right subjects that are going to inspire us in an emotionally healthy and noble way. The Rebbe then goes on and explains what it means self-sacrifice. Chapters 18 to 25 create a a very standalone kind of structure. He explains that Jewish self-sacrifice is something different to what we understand. Self-sacrifice doesn't mean giving up your life for your ideology, because that's not really giving up your life. Just your life and your ideology have become enmeshed with each other. So giving up your body for your ideology is not such a big deal. Jewish self-sacrifice is true self-sacrifice, which doesn't make any sense. We haven't got time to go into this completely right now, but it's a fascinating subject and it really demands a lot of attention. But the point that the Rebbe basically makes is that every Jew would give up his life rather than bow to a cross. And if a Jew wouldn't do that, then he's very, very sick. His Jewish soul has become very sick. A healthy Jew, who doesn't mean a religious Jew, but a Jew who hasn't been not overly, very much negatively affected. Basically, the Rebbe says that on the whole, any Jew, any single Jew, no matter how secular or dislocated he is from his religion, will give up his life rather than commit idolatry. And then he goes on, and through some very deep, it's very inspiring philosophy, explains how in truth any sin, every avera that we do is actually tantamount to idolatry. Idolatry truly, this is the whole foundation of Tanya, is the choice is always between me and God. There's no other option. There's nothing else to choose between. Every single thing we do, speak, or think in this world is either for God or for me. There's no other option. And the Rebbe explains that when it's for you, that at the time of when you're doing it for yourself, there is an utter disconnection from God. And therefore, just like you would give up your life rather than bow to the cross, if you're a person with integrity, how do you say that? An integral person. If you're
person with integrity.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? There's no other way. So if you're a person with integrity, just like you would give up your life rather than bow to the cross, so too you will be able to overcome this temptation right now. He's basically giving you some ammunition to use in the concept of the heart rules, the mind rules over the heart. Just like the doctor popping out saying, if you smoke that cigarette, you're going to die. You can have now the thought in your mind that if you do this act that is antithetical to the Torah, that is a sin, that is an avera, that's a transgression, you are becoming completely dislocated from the Creator, and therefore you should be able to have the energy to not do it. Okay, he goes on now, chapters 26 to 34 are again another self-contained unit, and now the Rebbe is discussing the main obstacles to divine service. By getting up, we just got up to chapter 25, which basically means the Rebbe's outlined his entire philosophy of what it means to be Jewish. Now he's going to get into details and specific advice regarding the kinds of things that stop us. The most poisonous, the most toxic poison to serving our Creator is, Gabriel, you can tell me this one.
DC.
What?
DC. Hello? What did you ask for? Say it again. Say the question again.
What is the most toxic poison in the most destructive thing that can stop us from serving Hashem?
Ego.
No, that's how that's the
ego.
way. If it wasn't for ego, we wouldn't be able to serve that. We wouldn't be able to serve Hashem. The thing that stops us from serving Hashem in the most profound way is depression. The ultimate ingredient to service of Hashem is simcha. We need simcha to be able to serve Hashem. If you don't have simcha, you can't serve Hashem. Depression and anxiety are two sides of the same coin. Okay, when we talk about depression, we're also talking about anxiety. Depression is self-projected negativity into the past. That makes me depressed. And anxiety is selfish negative thoughts into the future. Okay, it's the projection of self into the future is anxiety, and the projection of self into the past in a negative sense causes depression. What is depression and what is simcha? Depression is a blockage. It's the concept of blockage. The heart is blocked. Okay, simcha is the concept of free flowing. How do you say it? Free flowing. The heart is open. Simcha is also called psichas alev. The heart is open. Okay, so we need flowing emotions to be able to serve Hashem. So the Rebbe explains that there's three things that can give us depression, three kinds of thoughts. One is what I've done. The first one is what's happening to me. The second one is what I've done. And the third one is who I am. This covers, these three categories cover everything that can make you feel bad. Okay, what's happening to me? Oh, my life is terrible. My kids are bad. I don't feel well. I got no money, etc. Yeah. And the Rebbe to that says you should know that all of this is bringing you closer to him. Yes, it hurts, but without getting into the details of how he explains it, he basically says that this too is for the good. And if you meditate on that, it should help you get over the depression. It's not going to help you get over the pain. The pain will always be there. The question is if you're going to have to suffer. The suffering is to do with the self getting projected into it. But if you can actually get to a place of simcha, that's not going to mitigate the pain, but it will mitigate the suffering. That's what he says. Then he says, what about what you've done? You can't just say this is for the good when you've done bad things, because that isn't for the good. You shouldn't have done those bad things. So he says, if you start feeling bad about bad stuff that you've done, then you should know if it just like comes to you out of nowhere, then it's just to try and get you more depressed and pull you deeper into selfishness. The correct way of doing it is to take a specific time and meditate, not actually on what you've done, but to whom you've done it against. So just to very quickly, again, everything I'm saying, we could literally talk about for hours, but just to put it into human relationships, that if somebody did something horrible to his wife, he could turn around and say, oi, I'm so bad, I can't believe what I did. That wouldn't be much of a, that wouldn't really be building the relationship much, as opposed to if he turned around and said, oi, I can't believe that she had to endure this, that she had to endure this kind of behavior. That is called tshuva. That's real tshuva. That's
focusing on the other.
Exactly. If I'm saying, oi, I'm so bad, that's just called, that's like selfish self-help. Okay. Whereas if I'm saying, I can't believe that she had to endure this, that is called tshuva, and that is the re-merging with my wife. And then you can just exchange wife for God, and you've got the same idea. The 5 stages of the heart, very quickly, are, it's such a bizarre, it's such a, how to say bizarre, not disgrace. No, disgrace not the right word. It's just, it's so, no, it's so,
obscure.
No, wait, it's so uncomplicated. It's so disrespectful to this book to try and do what I'm doing right now. Please, I beg forgiveness from you, Rav Shner Zalman, Maladi. But whatever.
Don't apologize, just do tshuva.
Yeah, I'm doing it for good purposes. I'm just like, we're like giving over everything I'm saying. Literally, we could speak about for an hour, literally, and I'm saying it in like 30 seconds. But anyway, so the 5 stages of the heart. The first stage is called timtum alev, when the heart is completely clogged and a person's not feeling anything. The second stage is called shviras alev, where you've broken your sense of self-identity, when your sense of selfhood has been broken and you've lost your sense of identity, that's called Shvira Salev, and that is fertile ground to move into the next stage, which is called Merira Salev, which is called, oh sorry, the last stage is called brokenheartedness. Merira Salev is translated as bitterheartedness. Bitterheartedness could be described as the inner experience of enough. This is it, finished. I have to stop doing this. I have to get over this. That's the bitterness of heart, and that can motivate and compel us into what we call Pasichas Alev, which is Simcha, which is the openness of heart, and that will eventually bring us to the level of what's called Tuv Levav, which means utter self-transcendence, where Tuv Levav means that the Levav becomes the adjective and the goodness becomes the noun. So all the other stages is, my heart and then an adjective. The final stage is the goodness is the noun and my heart is the adjective. That needs to be thought about a lot, but that's a mind-blowing concept. And if we are able to disidentify with our body and to, identify with our godly soul, that the Rebbe says in the iconic chapter Lamed Beis, which means heart, Lamed Beis is Lev, heart, chapter 32, is the surefire recipe to love every Jew. Kolzman, that you are all the time that you are connected to your body and to your ego, everybody else and all of creation is experienced as a separate and antagonistic entity. It might be able to help me, therefore I will bring it to me, or if it will hinder me, I will push it away from me. But everything is separate and it only has relevance towards me. Once I've identified with my godly soul, which is by definition unified, as we said at the beginning, now that means that I will love every Jew because we're all one. Okay, again, we can speak without burning time. Okay, and then the Rebbe introduces in chapter 33 the purpose of creation, which is called Dir B'Tachtonim, meaning a dwelling place in the lowest realms, which means Hashem's desire is to enter into this lowly physical world. There's endless spiritual worlds that go higher and higher and more refined and more spiritual. They were all created for the sole purpose of Hashem expressing himself and feeling at home in this world. How does someone feel at home how does someone feel at home somewhere? Is that your hosts are nullified to you. What's a better way of saying that? Not nullified, that's not a good word. Your hosts are receptive to you. And your hosts are putting your needs above their own needs. That's how you feel comfortable somewhere. And that's what Hashem has created, this whole vast cosmic plan that we call creation, so that you and me can welcome him into our behavior. That's called Torah and mitzvahs. That is the purpose of creation. The 13.8 billion years, or whatever they say, and the 90 billion light years of space, and the squillions and squillions and squillions of tons of matter and everything that's going on is just so that you and me can do Torah and mitzvahs so that Hashem can enter into his world. That's it. How do we do that? Two primary things. Tzedakah, because that transforms all of our working, all of the energy and time that we spent earning money. You give a little bit of that money and it transforms all of that time into holiness. And he says not just learning Torah, but being koiveya eating the Torah, means fixing set times to learn. You hear the gutless of that? Fixing set times to learn means it's not just I learn when I've got a minute, because that would say like I've got a life, and when I can, I kind of fit Hashem in. Setting times to learn and not breaking it for anything except for in the most difficult circumstances means not that I have a life and I'm fitting God in. It means God is real, and I'm fitting my life around him. That's the concept of fixing times to learn. Again, it's the concept of making Hashem the center and making me the moving part, so to speak.
So shouldn't it say kavia itim to work? Shouldn't we just have set times to work and all the other time be learning?
It says kover itim the Torah. It doesn't say that. Your work should be fitted. You should fit your work in on the side. I mean, that could be 10 hours a day, but it should still be to you in your mind. Secondly,
how did you know to turn off the light?
tzedakah.
You're saying the fact that it's fixed. The fact that it's fixed means that that's the ikar of your day.
Exactly, and everything else is moving around it.
Okay. I heard one. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Let's keep going. A dwelling place below action. So we spoke about this basically. I'm going to miss out the candle analogy to get to the end. But there's another thing just very interesting. Doing mitzvahs is always for Hashem, as long as we're doing it with the right intentions. Whereas learning Torah is for us. But listen to this, Gabriel, you'll like this. Learning Torah in your mind is for you. But speaking it out, that's for Hashem. Because speaking it out, the lips moving and the air moving, etc., is bringing Hashem into the world of action. Even though it's speech is a kind of quasi-action because our mouth moves and we articulate with the whatever it is. So speaking the words of Torah is also another way of bringing Hashem into this world. The Rebbe then goes on, after explaining the importance of the physical mitzvahs, the Rebbe then goes on to not let you get the wrong impression to think that the intentions behind the mitzvahs aren't important. And he basically explains that there can be 6 different, motivations behind the mitzvahs. Okay, the highest motivation behind the mitzvahs would be a complete selflessness where Hashem himself is just moving through you. Okay, that would be compared to the world of Atzilus. Then we have intelligent emotions, which we spoke about before, the moyach being sholet al-alev, the mind being in control of the heart, thinking about the right subjects and meditating on the right subjects that give us the right emotions. That's a very high level of motivation. That goes with the world of Bria. Then there's the natural godly emotions that are just not, is it indigenous? Does that make sense to have indigenous emotions? Native. The native emotions of the heart. That's also quite a high level. When you just do mitzvahs because you have this native love for God, those mitzvahs go to the level of Yetzirah. If you're doing it by rote, because your dad said, or because your Rebbe said, or because just this is what I do, then the mitzvahs don't go anywhere. They don't go up, but they don't become treif in any way. They don't get taken by any kind of selfishness. They're still selfless in a sense, but just because you're doing it by rote, those mitzvahs stay in the world of Asiyah. And then there's doing it for an ulterior motive, which would mean, for example, the Rebbe gives the example of to be a Talmud Chacham. A person who's learning to be a Talmud Chacham means there's a level of self here. It's about me. It's not forbidden. So that Torah gets taken into the Klippas Noiga, the energy gets taken into the translucent shell, and it can be released quite easily. And then there's another level that the Rebbe doesn't even talk about, which is Lakanter, which means to upset someone or to annoy or to annoy someone. That would be from the completely dark Klippas. That would be the energy from the Torah, Chas v'Shalom, ending up going into the completely concealed Klippa, and you would not, that's better that you shouldn't be learning in that case. The person shouldn't be learning if he's learning to try and hurt someone else, then he should not pick up the text. Whereas if he's learning just to aggrandize himself, then the Rebbe says, okay, it's not very good, but just keep doing it, and eventually you will see the light and you'll stop being so self-involved. The Rebbe then goes on for the next 10 chapters, from chapter 41 to 50, and goes deep into the different kinds of love and fear. We haven't got any time to do this because we really need to finish on the last section. But basically, our entire relationship with Hashem is based on awe. In fact, all relationships are primarily based on awe, we could say, in regards to Hashem, or respect in regards to another human being. If there isn't respect, which translates as self-containment, there is no relationship. If I can't not do what you don't want me to do, I'm not in a relationship with you. Even if I'm doing things that you like me to do for you, if I can't hold myself back from doing things that you don't like me to do to you, then there's no real relationship. So the Rebbe basically emphasizes this point, that first things first is you need yiras shamayim, you need fear of God, you need a level of self-containment. Once you've got that level of self-containment, now we can get involved in the different loves, but first things first is self-containment. The lower level of fear is basically the concept that I am here and I am being watched by God. That's the lowest level of fear, called yirat hatah, where Hashem is a reality in my life, but it's my life and he's a reality in my life. The higher level of fear would be where I've moved my perspective, not from there's me and God's watching me, but there's God and somehow I'm also here. And that's called a fear of embarrassment, because like, what am I doing here? That doesn't make any sense. Again, these ideas need a lot of explanation. And then, oh, sorry, Hal, can you put yourself on mute, please? Sorry, I did it, no offense. And then the Rebbe gets into the different loves. I'm going to miss out the loves, but there is 1, 2, 3, 4.
Shmuel, just one thing. It's yiras haboshes, right?
Yiras haboshes is the same thing as yiras.
Fear of embarrassment. It's that I want to not exist. It's not that there's Hashem and me. It's that there's a Hashem and I don't want to be here because I'm embarrassed of being existing as separate from myself.
Absolutely. I'm not absolutely sure about that. I'm not. We have to talk about it, because chapter 50 is a kind of love, which is that I don't want to exist. I'm not sure. We can discuss that another time. But anyway, basically the Rebbe explains 3 kinds of fear, 4 kinds of love, 2 kinds of ways of accessing love, and then another kind of love that's different in kind to all the other loves. Okay? What we know is that the more sophisticated your experience of something is, the more you appreciate the nuances of that thing. The Rebbe was a gourmet on divine love, mamash. He was an absolute expert on divine love, and therefore he was able to, how do you say it? Not sense, taste the different nuances. How would you say that? Discern. He was able to discern different nuances of love, and it's really fascinating, really amazing. Anyway, now to finish off, is that what does it mean that Hashem rests? What does it mean, Hashras Hashchina? Very apropos for this time of year. What does it mean that Hashem rests in the temple? Hashem's everywhere, no? We say that from, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, up, down, left, right, all around. So if Hashem is everywhere, what does it mean he rests in the Holy of Holies, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Beis HaMikdash? And basically, to cut a very, very, very long and complex story short, Hashem, so to speak, comes into this world on the grander level. He is everywhere, but he enters into this world, into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's what the Kodesh HaKadoshim is, and he spreads out from the Kodesh HaKadoshim into the rest of the world. Just like your soul enters into your brain. Your brain is called the Kodesh HaKadoshim, even though your soul fills your whole body. It rests primarily in your brain, and it expresses itself from your brain into all the different aspects of your being, your vision, your smell, your action, your speech, etc. But it comes into your brain as a kind of unified whole and then expresses itself through all its different functions and abilities from your brain into the rest of your body. That's what the Kodesh Kadoshim was. The Kodesh Kadoshim was like the sun. The sun is the
Source.
the source of all the energy, thank you. And from the sun, all energy enters into the world, okay? Without getting involved in like thermonuclear stuff and all that kind of stuff. But on a simple level, the sun is involved in energizing all of life is energized by the sun, i.e. animals eat the plants eat sunlight, and that's the news.
So
Okay.
you're saying then that until the temple is rebuilt, Hashem doesn't enter into our world in the same way.
Well, in the same way, but I'll finish off the thought, and that's exactly the point. By the first temple, Hashem, so to speak, bypassed all of the higher worlds and was revealed in this. We're going to go over a few minutes. I can't. We have to. I'm sorry. Anyway, so in the first temple, which was miraculous, Hashem bypassed, without getting into the details, many of the higher worlds, and he was revealed in a miraculous way in this world. And therefore, Gabriel in the luchos, in the tablets, there was two miracles. The mem, they were engraved. Yeah, the mem and the samach are completely enclosed. So that channel of stone levitated in the middle. That was number one. Yeah. Number two, and part of that is that the engraving went all the way through the entire tablets. Yeah, they were actually square, the tablets. So the engraving went all the way through, and there were two miracles. Number one, the circle of stone in the samach and in the mem, that are closed letters, levitated. And number two, you could read the inscriptions on both sides of the tablet. It made sense from both sides. So it sounds like two kind of like weird, like just random miracles. But Gabriel, listen to this. They're not random miracles. They were the dissolution. They were the not paying attention to. They were the
Manifestation.
They were what, Dad?
Manifestation.
No, they were the manifestation of the fact that all of the laws of this world had been suspended. All of the laws of the world being described in two ways: gravity and cause and effect. Gravity was being disregarded by the channel of stone levitating in between the mem and the samach, and cause and effect was being suspended by the fact that they were carved all the way through, and they read the same on both sides. They were both readable from both sides. So in the first temple, it was a period of miracles, and that was symbolized by what happened in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Kodesh Kadoshim, in the tablets. The second Beis Hamikdash, it said that the Yidden who saw the first Beis Hamikdash, which was 70 years earlier, they cried when they saw the second Beis Hamikdash built, because it was so unmiraculous compared to the first Beis Hamikdash that they cried. Why? Because now the Shekhinah wasn't bypassing all the higher worlds; it was actually entering into the Kodesh Kadoshim of the lowest world, which is the mind of the lowest world. I'm not going to get into the details. What happened after the destruction of the second temple? The Kodesh Kadoshim, the place where Hashem enters this world, is in what's called the Daled Amos of Halacha. When the Jew performs halacha, fulfills and is makayim the mitzvahs, that is now how Hashem enters into this world. That is the Kodesh Kadoshim in this time, is our actions, our mind, and and our actions is how Hashem enters into this world. That's considered the Kodesh Kadoshim. And the Rebbe ends up with an analogy which really answers up all the questions, which is as follows. That the analogy of a candle, there's the wick and the oil and the flame. The wick symbolizes your nefesh of Bahamis, which really means your negative energy, your selfful energy. That's the wick. The oil is the mitzvahs, is the action of the mitzvahs. And the flame is God's presence. Now, this always annoyed me because the Rebbe said that it's through the transformation of the wick into fire that the flame is able to stay on the candle. But it always, okay, it's fine. But I looked it up, and it's actually that the wick is actually consumed very, very slowly. But the wick, of course, the oil is consumed, but the wick is also consumed. And given enough time, if you keep pouring oil, there's some kind of, it's like 15 gallons to 8 inches of wick or something like that. If you keep pouring in oil, the wick will eventually disappear. That is the conversion of your animal soul into godliness. And this is the finale of the entire Tanya, is that we are here not to replace the darkness with light. When you walk into a room and you turn on a light switch, yeah, what happens? It's not like when you turn on the air conditioning. When you turn on the air conditioning, what happens is the cold air pushes out the hot air. Okay? It's not the same when you turn on a light. When you turn on a light, it's not that the light kind of pushes away the darkness. The light instantaneously, the darkness just instantaneously gives way to the light. But there's a deeper concept, and this is the transformation of darkness into light. And this is the finale of the entire Tanya, where he says, what is the purpose of evil? What is the purpose of self in this world, which is evil? It is the fuel. Our sense of self is the fuel that burns, that allows God's presence to be in this world. Not that evil is an impediment and something that we have to overcome and banish and give way to the good. No. It's the evil that is the fuel that allows Hashem to come into this world. That is the purpose of evil. And the Rebbe finishes off with the words, Hashem Elokecha Eish Ochlahu. He is an all-consuming fire. That is the final message of the Tanya, that what you thought is your biggest problem, your sense of self, is actually it's the fuel that we have that allows Hashem to come into this world. That's called the transformation of darkness into light.
Wait, why is it the fuel?
Why is it the fuel? It's the wick. It's the wick. Your self, your sense of self is the wick that is slowly consumed, which is what allows God's light to stay connected.
I didn't bring for everybody. I
So
only
it's
brought.
Dafka, your sense of self, that is what allows Hashem to enter into this world. And if you didn't have a sense of self, Hashem wouldn't be able to come into this world. Because
Why is that? Why? Why? Explain that.
There wouldn't be any world. If there was no sense of self, there wouldn't be a world for him to come into. The concept of world, Helen, is self. That's what world is.
While I was davening, I overheard someone.
Well, Shkaya, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye, Tom.
Thank you for all your hard work on this.
You're in Chicago still?
Yeah. My WhatsApp will be working. Yeah.
See
Guys,
you-
we're riding tomorrow night, Thursday night.
Bezrat Hashem, have a safe trip.